Thank you. Angela McPherson. Come on forward, Angela. Thank you for your submission, which is...
I have slightly changed my submission, so I have a copy for everybody.
Okay, somebody will come and get that for you. Thanks, Sean. It's a very good submission.
What I want to talk about is the possibility of selling the Christchurch assets, and I'm against selling the assets, but there are a few points that I want to make. Christchurch people have experienced one of the worst series of earthquakes in recent world history, and this has been followed by the extreme stress that has been put on people by the insurance companies in which we placed our money and our trust. We have lost much built up over decades, and we do not want to lose any more. And I think previous councils have shown great foresight in investing surplus funds in things like the port, the airport, the lines company and city care. Earthquakes are a force of nature. Selling the assets would be an act of man, and I don't think it's necessary. When I talk about city assets, I include the companies that comprise Christchurch City Holdings and the council stock of social housing units. And I think that instead of selling, we should be asking these questions. Why is there pressure to sell? And why do some people want us to sell? It would be very interesting to know where the pressure is coming from. I know some of it is very obvious. And what are the motives for that pressure? And that is a question I would really like you to ask people like Peter Townsend and the government. What project would the money be used for? And is that project essential now? And I think it would be a terrible shame if the assets were sold just to pay running costs to keep the city running. How does the council plan to replace the lost income, particularly from Christchurch City Holdings? And I know that that stream of income, particularly prior to the quakes, has helped keep the rates at a manageable figure. I was unable to find recent figures for the dividends paid by Christchurch City Holdings. That leads on to the next question. How much will rates rise if the assets are sold? I know the proposal this year is for around about 6% rise, and I really think that Christchurch ratepayers are at a stage where you can't impose much more upon them. Now, I heard a comment made in the last couple of days that the Christchurch rates are among the lowest in the country. But please factor in the stress that Christchurch people live under, because I think that is probably the highest by a long margin in the country. Is it wise to lose control of the port, the airport and the lines company in particular? And of those, the most important, I think, are the port and the airport, our access to the outside world. Can the borrowing power of the assets be used to generate funds? And I know this is something, Madam Chair, that you have canvassed recently. And I just repeat that question. Can the borrowing power of the assets be used to generate funds? Are we prepared to take the risk of these assets being bought by asset strippers? And just bear in mind the 1980s and particularly New Zealand Rail and the disaster that selling New Zealand Rail was. We are feeling the effects still, and for many years to come we will be feeling the effects of that decision. And the last point I make here is that overseas experience in both developed countries like Spain, New Zealand and the UK, and developing countries like Argentina, Chile, Kenya and Azerbaijan proves that when assets are sold, prices go up and services go down, the last thing that we want. Is this really something that the Council is prepared to inflict on the citizens of the city? The Christchurch City Council assets belong to the citizens of Christchurch. They should not be sold to finance the building of white elephants that most do not want, will not be able to afford to use, and which will never return a profit. Those who want these projects should finance them. Instead, the Council needs to think of ways to utilise the assets and grow them. The CCH companies return a dividend to the city, and it's tempting to say that social housing does not. However, they cater for citizens who will struggle in the crazy rental market in the city. And I have a friend who's paying $160 a day, plus $10 for her cat, a day to rent while her house is being repaired. For financial and social reasons, we need to keep our assets. Please, I implore you, do not let them become yet another casualty of the earthquakes.
Thank you for a stunning submission. Andrew and then Glenn.
Yes, thank you very much for a well thought out and really solid submission. That's great. Now, clearly we've got a responsibility to balance the books, and that's what the budget and the annual plan's all about. So faced with your suggestion of not selling assets and faced with not increasing rates further, you talk about white elephant projects. What do you suggest the sacrifices should be?
The stadium is number one for me. But just a small anecdote, I meet with friends every morning for coffee, and this morning we looked at the press. I don't know whether it's page 2 or page 3. There's a photograph of the LSD Flower Show on it, and we saw savings in the top half of that page. And that's just half a page in this morning's press. We saw 2 items which we think are unnecessary for the running of the city.
Thank you.
And I know you will be going through line by line, particularly Councillor Manji over there. And yes, I think there probably are a lot of savings around, but my top priority for postponing indefinitely would be the stadium.
Thank you, Angela. I just wonder if you could be my speechwriter. The second, the real question I'd like to ask is what do you see as the long-term effects if the council was to sell down or sell off its assets, the long-range effects on the ratepayers?
On the ratepayers, I think rates would have to go up. But also I see that who is going to get control of the port and the airport? That is a question I'd really like you to bear in mind when you think about this. Who is going to get control of those 2 particular assets?